What's going on, guys? And welcome to the American Hotspur here on Stateside Footy. It is absolutely fantastic to be back. Of course, took a few days off for the Christmas break, but we are back here on New Year's Eve. And it's not just New Year's Eve, by the way. It's also January Transfer Eve, as tomorrow afternoon, I believe, here on the East Coast of the United States, the January transfer window will open throughout the Premier League. And of course, for my beloved Tottenham Hotspur, this is an absolutely massive January transfer window. And of course, the first January transfer window without Daniel Levy. We actually have a fantastic show for you today, as we're going to talk about a few different guys today. We do have some news and notes, but before we get into it, by the way, make sure you hit the good old-fashioned like and subscribe buttons, and also hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on anything upcoming here on Stateside Footy. By the way, man, hopefully you guys had yourself a fantastic Christmas holiday. I know that I certainly did, and it was nice to get back to the West Coast, get back to my hometown. But you know, we're back, and we still have a few things to go over when it comes to Tottenham Hotspur. And of course, we have Nateski75 in the house. By the way, Happy New Year to you, Nateski. Hope everything was doing well. And so tonight we are going to begin with this guy right here, Brennan Johnson. And let me pull this up real quick. All right, so Brennan Johnson, Crystal Palace has agreed to a $35 million deal for the Spurs forward. Johnson now has to decide if the move to Selhurst Park is worth the squeeze. Now, the interesting thing about this is that this would be the third straight year that Tottenham Hotspur has sold their leading scorer. Of course, it was Harry Kane. Then last year it was then it was Sonny, and now it's going to be Brennan Johnson. Three straight windows where it seems like this has essentially 3 straight years where this seems to happen. But in the case of Brendan Johnson, this might actually be a very good move for him. Now, if Spurs were smart, maybe you tack on a sell, you tack on a sell-on clause. If Brendan Johnson has the wherewithal to put himself in a position where he's actually going to meet his potential, maybe that might be something that you might want to do. Kind of hedge your bets a little bit. But that being said, one of the things that I actually like about this, and it's not just with Brendan Johnson, but it's also a guy like Yves Bassoum and some of these other peripheral players that aren't getting minutes with Tottenham Hotspur. Like this is the type of business you absolutely have to do. Now, granted, you're not going to get the $47.5 million that we spent from. No, but that being said, getting $35 million is actually nothing to sneeze at, considering with the rest of the things that we absolutely have to get done in this January window. It's better than zero. 35 million of something is better than 0 million of nothing. So from that standpoint, these are the type of shrewd moves you have to make. And by the way, Brendan Johnson has to continue to play. It's one of the things that if you're a young player, the last thing you can do is be put in a position where not only are you not going to get minutes, but also it's a World Cup year as well too. And so from that standpoint, I would probably assume that the Welsh international has a few priorities himself as well too. And this would actually be a very good move for him. But again, if you're Tottenham Hotspur, you're kind of looking at this kind of like, well, there is a way that we can kind of recoup some of those funds, and maybe that might be a situation where they tack on a sell-on clause, something like that. I also want to get into Fabio Paratici as well too, and the interesting thing about this is I actually find this kind of interesting because it's only been a couple months that Paratici has been in his role as I guess you can say a co-director of football, along with Johan Lang. And according to sources, that the powers that be aren't necessarily going to be upset if he takes the Fiorentina job. But one of the things that I look at this, and I'm kind of like, this is kind of embarrassing for Spurs, considering that, number one, Fiorentina is a club that's going to get relegated. And Johan Lang is so desperate to get out of Spurs that he's willing to take this. He's willing to go to Italy and work his way out of, I guess you can say, the second division of Italian football, just to get away from Spurs. Now, the interesting thing about this is when you kind of look at some of the moving pieces when it comes to Spurs and what has been said, what they're looking to do, and it kind of goes against everything that, Fabio Paratici has been looking to do. Number one, I almost guarantee you that Paratici did not want to share responsibilities with Johan Lang. He wanted to bring back Gabbanini. That was ixnayed. And now all of a sudden, he's in this position where, Johan Lang is going to take care of the youth while he's going to be more in charge of bringing in guys, that have, he can sell the club to senior players. It's not something that he's wholeheartedly interested, to a point where he's willing to take on, Fiorentina, a team that is absolutely going to get relegated. And according to Fabrizio Romano, they are waiting for final and formal steps with Spurs to make Paratici their director of football, and he's expected to be in place in Italy by the start of this window, which means that we're probably going to hear this coming down the pike in what I would probably assume in a couple of days. So from that standpoint, it feels like Spurs have an idea of how they want their front office to operate. They want open communication. They want all this good stuff, but they also don't want they don't want Paratici, which is kind of interesting. But it is what it is. Obviously, he was Daniel Levy's last, I guess you could say, big move as chairman of the club. And so from that standpoint, it almost feels like they're trying to rid the club of anything that has to do with Daniel Levy. And so if that means that Fabio Paratici leaves, so be it. Me personally, I don't necessarily like this. But that being said, I can understand exactly why Spurs are doing it. I'm curious to see how you guys feel about this. But that being said, as a fan of this football club, I kind of look at this and I kind of feel embarrassed for Spurs, because allowing this to happen goes against everything that they publicly said about what they want their front office to be moving forward. And it just seems that Spurs have gone out of the way to make sure that, non-football people are overseeing the football operations. I don't know how I feel about this one moving forward, but it is what it is. All right, let's go ahead and get into the transfer talk, because there are a few names that we are going to talk about today. Names that I like, names that I think you guys should like as well too. I guess we're going to start from the context of what absolutely needs to be filled in this January window, what can be pushed to the summer. And I usually start with, the left side, whether that's going to be left wing or left wing back. Me personally, I think one of the biggest reasons why this attack has stalled, yes, of course, it's top level strikers. But that being said, when you look at what is happening right now, what's about to come back now, whether or not you believe the videos that were circulating on X and Instagram about Dominic Slinky, it looks like he's training with the team. So it almost feels like that might be something that is actually going to happen. But, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but the way that I look at it is striker could be something that I would want to upgrade. But for me, it is either maybe in the midfield, depending on the player. But yeah, like if something, if something translates in the striker market where you're able to identify somebody, and it looks like Spurs have, and it's going to be Samu, and it looks like Samu Agahawa of FC Porto, and it looks like Spurs have actually made an $86 million bid for the FC Porto striker. Now, it is also said that Thomas Frank essentially visions Agahawa as the piece to build his attack around. And when you look at the peripheral numbers of a dude like Agahawa, and by the way, the dude is amazing. I like him, and I like the way that he plays. I guess the question that I have for you guys is whether or not you actually, number one, like Agahawa, but also two, whether or not you believe that he's willing to make that, or that he's ready to make the jump into the Premier League. Now, one of the things that I look at when it comes to, I guess you can say, Liga Portugal versus, the Premier League was one of the things that I liked about Victor Gyökeres was the fact that when you kind of looked at who he was absolutely scoring against, it wasn't lower table fodder of Liga Portugal. He was doing it against the Benficas of the world. He was actually doing it in European play as well too for Sporting CP, to the point where you almost like not only did he pass the eye test, but for a fact you feel comfortable with him not only making the jump to the Premier League, but also into European play as well too, because he has a little bit of body of work on top of the fact that he kind of doubled the production of Agahawa. And I was kind of going over Agahawa's goal production, and when you look at the 14 matches that he's played in Liga Portugal, he scored 9 goals, and that's actually not a bad haul considering it's only 14 appearances in Liga Portugal, but none of them have come against the top half of Liga Portugal. So he did score against Sporting, didn't score against Benfica, didn't score against Braga. He's doing it again. He's doing it against essentially the lower half of the table. Now, granted, last year he did score a couple against Benfica and he did score a couple against Manchester United, so fair enough. But that being said, for the price tag, 86 million euros, you have to be 100% sure that this is the guy that you feel that not only replaces Harry Kane, but that you're 100% certain that you're going to be able to build your attack around. There's certain qualities. Now, when I look at him on video, I like his positioning, and I like his ability to attack channels. Of course, I mean the guy has the ability to be direct. But that being said, when I think about Thomas Frank and the way that he needs it, number one, is he going to be somebody that you can trust in the hold-up play, because that's going to be something that is going to be a must for any striker that comes through the door. But also, is your recovery good enough to get yourself back into position when you're making those type of runs? And I don't know, man. Like, when I think about this, I can understand why they want him, from the standpoint that, one, you don't know about Richarlison's long-term future with Spurs, and you would probably assume that come the end of the season, you would probably think that might be a wrap for Richarlison. Same thing with Randall Kolo Muani as well too. There is, I guess you can say, there's not a lot of I can't speak English. There's not a lot of news as far as whether or not Spurs are keen on re-upping Randall Kolo Muani beyond this year. And so from that standpoint, you can understand the idea of Agahawa, because it, like, on paper, it seems to be the right move for Spurs, right? You actually get a young guy who's in form and he's popping goals left and right in Liga Portugal. So from that standpoint, fair. But that being said, the entire body of work doesn't necessarily match up to me. And it would be something that I don't necessarily think. Okay, I'll just say this. I don't think he's going to be ready to kick on. That's all I'm going to say. Like, I feel like there's going to be a betting period for a guy like Agahawa. And if you're paying 86 million for a dude, you're expecting him to come in and you're expecting him to hit the ground running. And that's where I have an issue with Agahawa. I don't necessarily think that he's going to do exactly what Thomas Frank thinks that he's going to do. So it's going to be interesting. That being said, I like him. I think there's something there. My biggest thing is, if you're spending that type of money, you better be sure. And there's something about him that, I don't know, man. I don't think I can hang my hat on. Adrian of Spurs Diehards TTID, who says Brown, Akalush would be excellent additions, 100%. We're going to get to Akalush in just a few minutes because that's the dude that I actually want as well too. And Nathaniel Brown would be an excellent addition as well too. The question is whether or not they actually view a left back as going to be priority in this window. Now, again, you would think that if certain pieces don't fall the way that they want, that maybe they might, target a left back, but everything that I keep hearing and keep reading says like that's probably going to be something that's going to be done in the summer window. All right, so Jan Diamande, and by the way, I love this dude's name, Jan Diamande. Apparently, Spurs are in advanced talks for the Red Bull Leipzig striker / winger. He has 7 goals in 16 appearances, and is thought to be had right around 65 to 70 million euros. And of course, about a week ago, we heard that Red Bull Leipzig was looking for like 100 million euros. And of course, now we hear that it's going to be a little bit more reasonable. The thing that I like about Diamande is the fact that he can play all across the attacking three. And the other thing that's also worth noticing here too is when you're looking at some of the targets, it almost feels like Spurs might bring in 2 wingers here. And especially if they do decide to move on from Brendan Johnson, there's going to be a need, because after all, Brendan Johnson is the backup to Mohamed Kudus. So from that standpoint, it almost feels like that just might be the avenue in which they are going to try to pursue, not just off the left side, but also the right side as well too. And having a guy like Diamande, again, who can facilitate a few different positions. Now, there's another guy who's coming up next who I'd rather have if you're going to try to shoot for that. But the interesting thing about this one is I like everything about this dude's profile. The one thing that I like about Diamande that I don't necessarily like about Agahawa is the fact that he's doing it in the Bundesliga. Me personally, I just rate the Bundesliga far and away better than Liga Portugal. No disrespect to the Portuguese, but that being said, when you look at the quality in the opposition in who and what he's scoring against, to me, I just think it plays a little bit better. And so from that standpoint, if you can get a guy like Diamande for 75 million euros, dude, the juice is worth the squeeze, because again, he's in a system that it's a little bit more similar to, what we saw when, Xavi was playing for him. Obviously, I think it's still the same system. But that being said, it's like you would think that the jump to the Premier League is not going to be that big of an issue. Now, I guess the question is we've heard from Thomas Frank that he wants players that fit a certain type, right? And he wants players that are, I guess you can say, that are going to translate, I guess you can say, to, Big Six type players. Players that I guess you can say they're the opposition of the Premier League, of what other of those Big Six teams are actually shooting for. And when you look at some of these targets, most of them are actually gunning for this guy as well too. Now, the interesting thing about Diamande is the fact that Manchester United have an interest in Diamande only if Spurs have an interest. This is weird, because the way that Manchester United play, they don't play with wide players. Yes, he can play up top, but the reality is for Spurs is he would be facilitating facilitating out on the wing. For Spurs, that's where he's going to play. And of course, Manchester United don't play with wide wingers. They play with 2 high tens and a striker. So the reality is, it doesn't make any sense why Manchester United would be targeting a Diamande unless they're also looking to the future as well too. Maybe they don't think that Ruben Amorim is going to be their guy, but regardless, I find it interesting that Manchester United is only interested in Diamande to cock block Spurs. It's quite interesting. But that being said, I like the idea of Diamande. And I don't have a problem with the fact that he's 19 years old. As a matter of fact, there's a difference between youth that we've been targeting in the last couple of years and the youth that is available or could be available for the right price for Spurs in the January window. For me, a lot of these guys, me personally, I just think these guys are going to be able to bet in a little bit better than what we've seen. I don't think it's going to take a year. What we saw with guys like Lucas Bergvall and Archie Gray. These guys, a big part of me just thinks that some of these guys are going to be able to hit the ground running ASAP. potentially. It just depends on the plan. Diamande. The interesting thing about Diamande is, like, where do you see him? Where do you see his best position? I guess that's the biggest question with him. Me personally, I look at Diamande as a right-sided attacker, but I don't know. You guys tell me. Let's see. Dan Davenport says, "Happy New Year, Steve. What do you think, Brennan Johnson, who looks set to leave to join Palace, as well as Paratici rumored to be to Fiorentina?" I think it's going to happen. I think both are going to happen. As a matter of fact, I would be surprised if they didn't happen. Now, the interesting thing with Brennan Johnson is there is now more interest around the Premier League, as obviously Bournemouth were already named, but now Everton seems to be interested as well too. Now, it's weird because I don't think Everton are really in a position to buy. Now, maybe I could be wrong, but the interesting thing about it is, Everton have more than one need. It just seems to be that they're going to be fine waiting until the summer. I can understand Bournemouth because they are going to lose Antoine Semenyo. They're going to lose him. And having a guy like Brennan Johnson coming in, playing in a system, Iriol system, which really is a direct counterattacking system, seems to fit him. And if you ask me which system I think is better for Brennan Johnson, it's probably Bournemouth. But that being said, I also think that he kind of thrives at Crystal Palace as well too. I think both of those are good spots for him to land. And I think both teams are going to use him, and I think he's probably going to reach his potential with either. As far as wherever he lands, there better be a sell-on clause, right? Because again, if you're worried about losing your investment, right? I think they bought him for what, 47.5 million a couple of years ago from Forest. So if you're worried about it, tack on a sell-on clause. He's only 23, 24. So there's a good possibility that if he evolves and he develops and he reaches his potential, that he could be on the move again. So why wouldn't you want to, get 5% of his next move? Who knows? As far as Paratici, I think he's desperate to get out. I think that the higher ups, I think the higher ups have a plan. They don't want a system that relies on one person. And I think a guy like Paratici wants power, right? He wants the power to be able to build a club in his image. And the interesting thing about Fiorentina is, like, number one, they're going to get relegated. And I think if you're a Spurs fan, that's kind of embarrassing considering, I don't think I've ever really seen that, right? A guy like Paratici, who does have a very positive reputation around Europe, would be willing to leave a big club, or allegedly a big club like Spurs, to go take over a relegation candidate. I think that kind of says everything, really. The next guy that I want to talk about is actually my personal favorite, and I like this kid right here. It's this guy right here, Chris Smit from AZ Alkmaar, 19-year-old Dutch midfielder. And this is the reason why I like him more than I kind of like Diamande, is because we absolutely have a definite need in midfield. Now, again, a lot of this is contingent on Dejan Kulusevski and the uncertainty of whether or not he's going to be able to come back and be able to kick on. But that being said, it's also, you want to embed another guy to play off of, potentially Lucas Bergvall and Archie Ray. And of course, there's comparisons to Frankie de Jong because he has the ability to be withdrawn, sit back and just ping balls forward, but he also can play higher up the pitch, which is why he's also been, compared to Kevin De Bruyne as well too, because the dude just has an uncanny ability with the ball at his feet. As somebody who is vaguely familiar with the Dutch Eredivisie, I watch a lot of Dutch Eredivisie football, by the way, and this dude is legit. And there's a reason why it's not just Tottenham Hotspur that want him. It's Bayern Munich want him. Arsenal want him. Both Manchester teams want him. Newcastle United want him. It's like there is a lot of interest. There is a a lot of interest with Chris Smith. And the thing about this is, we also run an attacking system that is going to be dependent on link up play. And one of the things that we are absolutely horrendous with right now is link up play. And here's the thing: I'm not scared about the fact that he's 19 years old, because again, when you think about the teams that want him and you think about the way that they play football, you can envision a scenario where he goes to any one of those teams, and within 4 weeks he's going to be in the starting 11. After a nice little grace period, he's going to be in the starting 11. And from that standpoint, this is probably the one that I actually feel that is going to be in the starting 11 pretty much right when he comes walking through the door. Maybe he'll, Thomas Frank might introduce him a little slowly, maybe slow at first. But the thing about this is, it's like you look at the upside and you look at the price tag. 52 to 65 million euros for a guy who has the potential to be world class. Like, this dude is so good with the ball at his feet. So good. And it's like, this is the guy that we've been missing in our midfield for years. And, when I think about this, and when I think about the potential of what our future midfield is going to look like, whether that's, Chris Smith, Bergvall, and Gray, or a combination of two with one coming off the bench, because obviously we still have Xavi for the next 5 years. But regardless, man, it's like this all of a sudden went from somewhat of a liability to now probably one of our strengths. Chris Smith is the absolute legit. And by the way, let me pull this up real quick, just out of curiosity. Yeah, I'm kind of curious real quick. 15 matches. I think he scored twice this year. But when you look at his passing advanced metrics, when it comes to his passing, this dude just can literally ping a ball 60 yards up the pitch and just literally hit some dude on his foot. Like, this dude is so legit. And his passing is uncanny for a 19-year-old. And by the way, if we're able to beat out the likes of Bayern Munich and Real Madrid for his services, it's on it, dude. Seriously, this might be the signing of the window. Let's see. Dan Davenport says Spurs need experienced players as well as young players. Yeah, but the interesting thing about this is what we're kind of noticing is, like, number one, Spurs don't have the cachet to bring in those type of players. Let's just call it for what it is, Dan. Like, we're not the first at the table, not in the Premier League at least. Liverpool, City, Arsenal, those are going to be the first three teams that get. I hate to be the one to say it. We just don't have it. We're not that type of team because we were the team that were unwilling to pay wages. We put ourselves in a position where we're almost second to ask. And by the way, Manchester United is probably before us as well too. And so unfortunately, we either have to overpay, and even then it might not be enough. So we'll see. But that being said, it's like, yeah, I would love to. Number one, like, who are we targeting though? Seriously, who are we targeting? What is it? Goretzka. Turns out we're not going after Goretzka, Leon Goretzka. Sucks. I actually like him too. Let's see. Spurs diehards. Adrian says Fiorentina buy Solomon, but no mention of Paratici as a 2-year contract. Yeah. The interesting thing though is, like, this is supposed to, like, I'm hearing this Paratici is supposed to be finalized within the next couple days. That Tottenham. How do I explain this? That Tottenham wouldn't be upset if he left. The way that this new, I guess you could say this new Enoch version 2.0 is, they want to rid this club of anything that has anything to do with Daniel Levy. And they look at him as a Daniel Levy hire, which is weird, considering, Johan Lang as well too, which is also kind of odd. But the reality is apparently, they rate Johan Lang to do the job. And if Paratici wants to leave, they'll let him go. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about Savinho. Now, I'm not a big fan of Savinho, and I think I've been vocal about this as well too. There's a lot of moving parts with Manchester City, and of course, it's not just Savinho that Spurs are interested. They're also interested in Oscar Bob, and they're also interested in Omar Mamouche. And the reality is that number one, City is not going to do anything until Semenyo comes through the door, and I'm hearing like that's going to be like what, on the 10th or the 11th of January, and so there's not going to be any movement until then. But here's the thing: this is all posturing, because one of the things that City do well is they're not only are they ruthlessly pragmatic, but they're also not stupid as well too. And if they can get the right price for the player, they will move them. And the reality is, when you look at the depth chart and the fact that Savinho, the only reason why Savinho stayed was because obviously City paid him. But he's still interested in making the move. Understand, it's understandable. But that being said, they all, what was interesting about this was, if you ask me, Spurs actually would rather have Omar Mamouche, but that's not going to happen, because when you look at City's depth chart, Omar Mamouche is the backup to Erling Haaland. And so if Erling Haaland gets hurt, they don't have another striker. They don't have, I guess, another 9 that they actually trust who's going to be capable, which is the reason why they want to hold on to Omar Mamouche until the summer. And so from that standpoint, if there's anybody that Spurs might be able to get from City, it'll probably be Savinho. But I don't rate Savinho. And, what was interesting about it is, like, when I was kind of, when Savinho actually went to City to begin with, and I want to pull this up real quick, that I didn't necessarily rate him. Like, don't get me wrong, like, he was pretty good in La Liga. Like, I think he was with Girona, and I thought that he was more or less, that I guess you can say, like, it felt like he was almost perfect for La Liga, and I thought that was his level. And of course, when you have those type of seasons and you get on the radar, you're going to take the money, you're going to be moved. But one of the things that we quite noticed in his time with Manchester City was that his playing time has literally decreased to the point where literally he's just, I guess you can say, like a third bench option. And when you look at Phil Foden, and you look at Ryan Cherokee, and you look at some of these other options, he's just not getting any minutes. Okay, great. So why do they keep him around? Again, they're probably looking for the right price. And so if Spurs are willing to overpay, I would probably assume that we're going to get him. But me personally, there are better options out there than overpaying for a guy like Savinho. I don't think Savinho comes to Spurs and does what people think that he is. I think he's name only. Me personally, I think he's name only. And again, if you ask me, I think they would rather have Omar Mamouche. But again, I don't necessarily even rate Mamouche really. It's weird. Like, when I look at Manchester City, yes, they have some pretty good players that are coming off the bench, but the ones that we want, nah, I don't think so. Now, granted, let me pull this up real quick, because I wanted to. Let's go ahead, pull this up real quick. All right, here we go. Where he played. Let's go to 23, 24. Yeah, so I think it was, when he played 37 matches for Girona, and he had 9 goals, 10 assists, and he was absolutely brilliant. One of the interesting things though is like when you look at it and you kind of see who he was scoring against. The funny thing about it is it's like again, this is the same issue that I have with Samu, right? One of the things that I didn't like about Samu and one of the reasons why I didn't necessarily rate him was the fact that Samu was ripping it up against bottom table Liga Portugal sides. And one of the things that I noticed when he was at Girona, and I think he had 41 appearances for Girona, 11 goals, 10 assists, and only one came against what you would call big clubs of La Liga. And that was on January 3rd, 2024, he scored against Atletico Madrid. Outside of that, he's doing it against Getafe, Granada, Mallorca, maybe Villarreal, UD Almeria, Rayo Vallecano. It's like, he's doing Osasuna, Valencia. It's like, yeah, don't get me wrong, like he's productive, but he's not productive in the way that you want him to be, where, he's one of those guys that are, I guess, doing it against the top half of La Liga. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but me personally, I think that kind of matters. But that being said, he got the move to Manchester City for his ceiling. And me personally, I don't think he's necessarily lived up to it. And me personally, I think we can do much, 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 much better than Savinho. Let's see. So Dan Davenport says Ricardo Pepi is being linked to a club in the Premier League. Yeah, it's Fulham. And Fulham have asked, I think Fulham have made a £26 million offer for Ricardo Pepi, who plays for PSV in the Dutch Eredivisie, and it was rejected. But they are rumored to be, they're going to make another offer. PSV wants minimum 35 million euros for him. And from that standpoint, if, by the way, PSV is under no rush to move Ricardo Pepi. But that being said, if Fulham really want him, they will they will make the offer that they feel like PSV will accept. But that being said, it's like you can understand why they want him, because Ricardo Pepi is probably one of the best strikers outside of the Premier League right now. And of course, he's coming into a World Cup year. But I guess the question really is, like, if he goes to Fulham, is he going to be starting, right? Because again, it is a World Cup year. And maybe you would think that, like, as far as I'm concerned, I don't necessarily know if that might be something that you want to do after the World Cup, but we'll see. Let's see. So big up, Steve. With Pep saying he won't stand in a player's way to leave, did Savinho push to leave, or did the board not allow it because he has a new contract and doesn't start? I would think that's a great question. I think in many ways, one of the bigger reasons why he didn't leave was the fact that I think he was second. I think he was second choice. And then and I think correct me if I'm wrong, he got an extension as well too. He got a new contract. And so I think that definitely played a part into it. But as this thing has progressed, he's fallen down the depth chart to the point where I don't think it matters anymore. And again, I just think that this is going to be a situation where now that Antoine Semenyo is going to be coming through the door to City, I would probably think that they're going to be more than willing to let him go, but they're not going. They're not just going to let him go, for some kind of reduced price, because again, it's a Premier League rival. And so they're probably going to try to stick to Spurs as much as they possibly can. And by the way, if it's anything over 60 million pounds, I'm out. 100% I'm out. I don't even think he's worth it at 60, if I'm being perfectly honest. Me personally, I just think that Savinho is, I think he's mid at best. Dan says that PSV are scarier than Champions League. Yeah, they're great. Calvin Phillips needs to leave City so he can try to get into the England squad. I actually like Calvin Phillips, but I think he got, what was the injury that he got? He got the cruciate, right? He tore his cruciate. Yeah. Let's see. Spurs should have gone for Semenyo. They did. They were willing to, essentially make him like the highest, like one of the highest paid players, if not the highest paid player, not only in club history, but also top 5 in the Premier League. And he said no. So I don't think Semenyo is worth 65 million either. I happen to agree with you as well too. I do too. Let's talk about Akalushe, Magnus Akalushe, because me personally, this is the guy that I absolutely want as well too. Like, here's the thing. Like, if we're looking to fill the left side with somebody that is going to not only have a high side, but also can actually hit the ground running right now, it's this dude. AS Monaco forward Magnus Akalushe. Apparently, Spurs have no problem meeting the 70 million euro fee. Granted, Monaco is not in a rush to sell him, so it is what it is, and I can understand Monaco's position because they're still in the Champions League as well too. But when you look at him, he's got 41 goal contributions and 118 appearances for AS Monaco. So the dude delivers the good as well too. But that being said, when you look at him, he's one of these rare cats that can play multiple styles, and he's not going to get lost off that left-hand touchline like I actually think Savinho would end up doing. And this is like there's of the players that I've highlighted so far, there's like 3 of them that I strongly want, that I actually think that makes this team moving better. And I don't have a problem with the fact that he's 22, 23 years old. Me personally, like these are the type of players that Spurs should be targeting. It's like I understand that, in all intents purposes, like if we can actually get players, like Semenyo or whatever the case may be, like if we were in a position where we actually could, I guess use the word oven ready, get these type of oven ready players, that would be absolutely fantastic. But unfortunately, we're not that club. And so we're trying to have to find we're trying to have to figure a workaround in order for this team to get better. And so unfortunately, like these are the type of players that we're targeting. But the good news is so is every other top club in Europe. They're also targeting them as well too. So we're actually targeting the right type of players. But it's also when you think about think about how Thomas Frank wants to construct his team. These are players that come immediately right into the starting 11 and that are going to hit the ground running. Magnus Akalushe, or Akalush, however you want to pronounce his name, is phenomenal. He's literally Monaco, one of Monaco's best player, if not the best player. And when you look at him play, one of the things that I like about him is the fact that he can cut in onto his other foot. So if you want to play him in, he can. If you want him to stay outside against the touchline and create, he could do that as well too. The dude is absolutely fantastic, and he can finish as well too. This is the thing that I like about him, and the fact that we haven't replaced Sonny with somebody that actually can be that type of player for us moving forward. This is the dude that's going to do it. Like if there is any one of these players, there's 2 players so far that I would have no problem paying it. And if we actually brought in Chris Smith and Magnus Akalushe for 150 million combined, that's an absolutely phenomenal window right there. And if that's all we get, then fair enough. That's an absolutely positive window. And I wouldn't have any qualms that we didn't necessarily address striker, or we didn't necessarily address the left back, but we also strengthened our midfield for the now and for the future, and we also got a cornerstone piece and a potential superstar, Magnus Akaluche. Ooh, that's exactly what this is. It's like, I think that this club absolutely needs a superstar, and I think this kid's it. I really do. And I also think this guy is a superstar. And of course, I'm talking about Keenan Yildiz. And the interesting thing about this is, the thing about Yildiz is that this dude can play out on the wing, and he also can play the 10 as well, too. Like, this dude is unbelievable with the ball at his feet. And the interesting thing about this is, like, Juve. So here's the thing about Juve. And Juve, for the first time, Juve is actually being budget conscious, which is kind of odd, because usually historically these are the type of players that Juve wouldn't have a problem re-upping with. Now, Yildiz is looking for a $5 million salary. And Spurs and Arsenal have said, yeah, cool. That's not an issue, because they understand, like what every other team understands, is like this, the upside and the upshot with this kid is that, again, just like Akaluche, he comes right into your starting 11. And he facilitates multiple positions, and he can do it at a high level. And the interesting thing is that I think the weird thing is, I wouldn't say it's weird. I would just say that it's worth it. And but with Akaluche, you know exactly where he's going to be playing. With Yildiz, the question is what's his strongest position? Because here's the thing, it's like, he's good. Again, he's good essentially across the midfield three. He can play them all. And one of the things that now just comes into my head, it's like, okay, cool. So are you good at three but not great at one? Or are you great at all three? Because he can play off the right, can play off the left, and he can play at the 10. So which position are you giving this kid $5 million a year to play? And is he going to be there week after week after week? Because again, if you're going to pay somebody that type of money, that's exactly what you want him to. That's exactly what you're doing. You're paying him to be your 10 or your left-sided winger, because you're certainly not going to do that to bring him in and maybe play him every other week. It just I don't know. It's not my thing. But what I will say is that, getting a guy like Yildiz is a game changer, just like Akaluche. And now all of a sudden, when you're starting to kind of look, not only to the second half of the season, but you're starting to look to the future, you're kind of like, God damn it, like the upside of the team is absolutely scary. Like if they ended up with Key Smith, Akaluche, and Yildiz, holy shit, that's good. A part of me thinks that it's probably going to be Samu. I think they like Samu, and I think that Thomas Frank really likes Samu. But if you were telling me that it was like Samu and Keith Smith, and that was your window, I'm good with that as well too. But Akaluche is the guy they need to sign. Let's see. He goes on to say, "Are you surprised Jonathan David hasn't hit the ground running at Juve?" A little bit. But that being said, you can understand. You're moving a little bit up. You're taking a little bit of a step up from Ligue 1. When you look at the table in Serie A, and you're looking at, I guess you can say, from essentially spots 12 all the way through 1, you're looking at teams that actually have very good defenses. And that's what Serie A really is. It's a very disciplined, very structured and organized league where, they put an emphasis on defenses. So if you're a striker, you're going to have to be able to step your game up. And I like Jonathan David. I think he's a good striker. Did I think that Spurs should have went out and got Jonathan David? I know that there's interest in Jonathan David. But do I think that he, put it this way, right? Like if you held a gun to my head and said, Ricardo Pepi or Jonathan David, I'm taking Pepi. I think he's just a better player. I think when it comes to the Premier League, the ability and the upside, I think long term belongs to Pepi. Maybe the short term might be to David, but I don't know, man. That's an interesting one. Lastly, I want to talk about Saeed El Mala. Spurs have made formal inquiries to Saeed El Mala, and it looks like FC Cologne has set the price for the left winger at 60 million. I've heard this is high up as 70. And one of the things I like about Saeed is the fact that this dude is a bull in a china shop. I like this guy because he's got the right attitude, right? This dude plays hard. And what I like about him is that he's not afraid to mix it up. And that's something that I think that this team absolutely needs. They need one of those rough and tumble dudes that are going to do the dirty work, right? And Saeed El Mala is one of those type of players. I love watching him play. I like the upside as well, too. And it's the same thing with Akalushe that I like about Saeed El Mala is that he has no problem cutting in onto his other foot. So if you want to play direct and you want him to invert a little bit, he can do that and he can finish. For a 19-year-old, that's an extremely rare talent, right? That's why these two wingers, Spurs are so keen to sign because I don't think they even care which one they get because I think they believe they believe in the upside of both. Now, me personally, I want Akalushe just because he's 23 and he has 118 appearances in League One, so he's done it for a little bit But that being said, like again, when you're looking at the skill set of a dude like El Mala, and you look at the pace and you look at the physicality, you're not worried about whether or not he's going to be able to handle the Premier League. I think that would be. I would think that would be I think you would be okay with that, right? And again, most of these guys are young, but again, I think when you're looking at what Spurs are right now versus what fans perceive them to be, we're not going to be in line for experienced players that say Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City, Man United are going to be targeted. We're not going to get those players unless we drastically overpay, which I guarantee you there's going to be some players that will say yes to that. But the reality is like we have to find a workaround. We have to find the workaround. And the workaround is, okay, cool. Find guys that are anywhere between 19 and 23 that have been playing senior football, that are playing with teams that potentially are playing in Europe, that actually have that type of experience. So we know for a fact that when we bring them in, they don't have to worry about the challenge of playing every 3 days. And then also their upside as well, too, because you also have to think about the resale on some of these players as well, too. So that's interesting. Spurs should try and target Scott McTominay. And the interesting thing is I was just reading something this morning about McTominay. Me personally, I think that I actually like McTominay. I really do. I've never disliked him. I guess the question is whether or not Spurs, whether or not he would want to even come to Spurs. Do you the interesting thing was that he left Manchester United for multiple reasons, but then all of a sudden he goes to Napoli, and it seems like he's found his level, and he's excelled in Italy. And so the question is like, would he leave something that's comfortable to come back to a team like Spurs? I don't know, man. Oh, by the way, there is still interest in Conor Gallagher. I heard that as well today too. That Spurs still rate a guy like Conor Gallagher. And the interesting thing about Conor Gallagher is the fact that there is no higher level. He is exactly what he is going to be. And I don't. It's weird. I don't necessarily have a problem with the idea of Conor Gallagher. I think he's done it at the Premier League level. I don't know. I think there are intriguing options that I think are a little bit better suited for Spurs. And the problem with Conor Gallagher is you're going to have to pay to get him. From a business standpoint, and by the way, you absolutely have to consider this. This is a part of the game now. The resale, there is a thing about resale, right? So if you're going to spend 70 million euros to get Conor Gallagher to come back, it's the same thing with Ivan Toney as well too. It's either he has to hit the ground running and produce, or it's going to end up being a waste of money. And that's the one thing that Spurs cannot do. Spurs absolutely cannot do that. They're not in a position where they're going to be able to take that on and then carry a guy that they can't sell. And that's one of the big issues with guys like Ivan Toney and Conor Gallagher. At least for me, at least. Let's see. And everyone who goes to United gets worse. So when McTominay leaves, I'm not surprised he gets better and starts to perform. Except Niall, it's not like he left to another Premier League team. He went to Napoli. He went to Serie A. And it's not on the same level. Let's just keep it real, man. Serie A is not on the same level. And with that standpoint, man, you wonder whether or not that the pressure the for a team like Manchester United, that's one, and number two, the pressure of playing in the Premier League, whether or not that may have not been his level. Two things to consider. We need someone like Gallagher. He is a very experienced midfield player and gets very little playing time in Spain. Me personally, I would. Let's find out real quick. Let's do ourselves a favor. I understand where you're coming from. I understand exactly where you're coming from. Conor Gallagher, by the way, 25 years old. So yeah, he's kind of smack dab, right in the smack in the right in the middle of his prime. 18 matches this year, 2 goals. And let's see. Let's just take a look, right? So apparently, yes, there is legit interest. And it looks like he wants to come back to the Premier League, and I think he would be accept a move potentially to Spurs. Manchester United are also the other team that might want him. Now, remember, he joined Atletico 18 months ago for 35 mil, and he couldn't necessarily crack that team. So now of a sudden, now that he couldn't crack that team, all of a sudden they're considering offers. One of the things that I will say is that understand that, yes. Okay, I'll be the first one. So hold on. I'll just say this, that it's the same thing that when we were talking about Keith Schmidt, is the fact that what Spurs absolutely need is link up play, the ability to link the back to the front, and also the ability to be able to do that and break press. And we don't necessarily have that. As a matter of fact, we don't have it at all. So would Conor Gallagher help in that regard? Yes. Yes, he would. Like, I don't want to sit here and say that he wouldn't. I guess the question you have to ask is he going to be somebody that can also play higher up? That can not only link, but also be a late run, put himself in a position where he can also distribute and potentially play balls in, right? Because I'm going to need a midfielder that can also track and can also can do more than just one thing. Hence box to box. Yeah, I think maybe. I guess the question is, okay, cool. So they bought him for 35 mil. How much are you going to pay for him? How much are you going to pay for Conor Gallagher? What do you think is the appropriate amount, right? Because that being said, he goes to Atletico for 35. Can we get him for 30? Can we get him for 25? Because at 25 million euros, I would certainly do that. If the price is right, I would do Conor Gallagher. I mean, let's not forget that he was also a part of the English national team as well too. Like the dude has played in big games for the English national team. He does have experience. Me personally, I don't give a shit that he played for Chelsea. I just don't care about that. I don't know, man. The idea of AZ Alkmaar, their midfielder, I kind of want that kid. Let's see. Dan Davenport goes on to say Jesse Marsh, he didn't last long as Leeds manager. Bielsa was better Leeds manager than Jesse Marsh. Yeah, but Jesse Marsh was brought in, by the way, to keep him. He was brought in to keep him up, and he did exactly what he was supposed to do. Like he came in, when Jesse Marsh came to Leeds, they were literally in a relegation scrap, and he kept them up. That's what his job was to do, right? And he did it. He didn't last because Leeds didn't do anything to, Leeds didn't give him any, didn't give him many tools. So yeah, for a fact that your squad's not good, or I mean it's decent, not great, and you're in a league like the Premier League where every single year every team is getting better, and yet you're not necessarily adding players. What do you think is going to happen? Of course, Jesse got fired, but Jesse Marsh is a good coach, though. I will as far as American coaches go, I would think that he's like top 3 of American coaches in the world right now. And the fact that he was hired by a Premier League team to keep him above the relegation zone, and he did it. I think that says a lot about him. I think that says a lot about his ability to connect with players. But understand that Leeds team, by the way, was essentially a high functioning championship level team at the Premier League level. Like they were limited to begin with anyways. And when your opposition is spending 60 to 90 million pounds on a player, and you're kind of dinking with 20 million pound players or 10 million pound players, man, you're going to be limited in what you're going to be able to do. So it's not surprising that he ended up getting fired. But when you look at his resume and the fact that he was coaching in Germany, I think he coach. By the way, I think he coached Erling Haaland at one point when he was in Salzburg. Yeah, Jesse Marsh. Like what's interesting about Jesse Marsh is that I would think right now, like if I had to rank the best U.S. coaches right now, I would say Pellegrino Matarazzo, who just took over Real Sociedad. Jesse Marsh is one of them, and I think Brian Schmetzer is another one as well too. Let's see. Could you see Inter Miami going for Mo Salah? No. I don't even think Mo Salah even agrees to come to the U.S. right now. Maybe, but I doubt it. Let's see. Maresca is under pressure to keep his job at Chelsea, according to reports. Yeah, by the way, that's a great question, man. That's a great question. That's a great question. Do you guys actually think that Maresca keeps his job after this year? That's a great question. I don't think he does. I don't think he does, right? Because there is an expectation with Chelsea, and for the amount of money that they have spent on that first team. Now, granted, they're sitting tied for fifth with on 30 points with Manchester United. And so from that standpoint, sure, they're within 2 points of a Champions League spot, but understand that Chelsea Chelsea is with the money that they have spent, the demand is not just Champions League, but also winning the Premier League, and they're absolutely nowhere near winning the Premier League. And so, from that standpoint, does he get axed? And especially if they go out early in the FA Cup, yeah, I can probably see that. What I meant was Marsh was unlucky to lose his job. I don't even think that either. I think that it was understandable why he got fired from Leeds. One of the things that I absolutely dislike is the fact that there are some teams who feel like managers are supposed to work magic, and it's like you're supposed to make the most out of to get the very best out of your players. And while that's true, it's like if they're only at a certain level, there's only so much you're going to get out of them. And that Leeds team was great. The job that Marcelo Bielsa did at Leeds was phenomenal, and he completely changed the entire culture at Leeds. That was one of my favorite championship sides. But the reality is, it's like, once you get there, once you get to the Premier League, you have to consolidate, and they certainly did not do that. And there's only a certain amount that you're going to be able to do. I don't even think he was unlucky. I just think that it is what it is. So from that standpoint, I guess to recap, I like the targets that Spurs are looking at. I really do. I like the ambition, and I like the initiative, because a lot of these guys are very good, and the upside is absolutely real. And again, when you look at what Spurs are, and I hate to be the one to say this, right? Because I understand, dude, I'm an American. I get it. The reality is, it's like we have done ourselves such a disservice over the last 15, 20 years by not being proactive in the transfer market, right? And I think I said this on the Irish Hotspur about a week and a half ago, right? Like, there were seminal moments over the last 20 years where it was literally like those stick or twist moves where, if you're going to stick, you have to be able to go all the way. And if that means that you have to break your personal transfer records, then you have to do it. Because regardless, in 6 months, one of your competitors is going to pay a shitload of money for some player. And the arms race is going to be on. Like, do I need Spurs to spend crazy amounts of money? No, not really. But is the expectation that they are going to stay competitive with the rest of their big six compatriots? Yeah. And that's something where I feel like we don't know whether or not this new version of ENIC is going to do that. We have yet to see it. But again, like, for instance, if they went and got Samu Agahawa or Diamande or Keith Smith, or they got Smith and, say, Akaluche, and that was their window. They got like two of their their top 5 targets. I would think that would be an excellent start, just considering that, the January window, it's like if you're looking for experienced players, you're going to get them on. You're essentially looking at players that aren't getting any playing time, and maybe you can work out a loan deal. You know what I mean? That type of thing. But for the most part, these are the type of players that you're targeting, because those type of players most likely aren't going to be available. And by the way, no, I don't. Yes, I do. I do believe that we would rather buy Diamande over Savinho. Me personally, I'd rather take Diamande, just because I think Diamande is I hate to say this. I think he's a better version of Matisse Tell. I think Diamande can play the left side, and I think he probably can do it well. But I also think that he's also if you need to play him up on top, he's also a good finisher. I just think he's a much better version of Matisse Tell, who, by the way, still probably needs to get playing time. Let's see. I have foster family in the U.S. and San Jose area. I love American live streamers who follow Spurs. Oh, thanks, man. I actually, by the way, I actually like San Jose. I'm actually one of the weird ones that actually likes the San Jose area, by the way. Not a bad area. Let's see. Savinho, as he has proven in the Prem, but Man City may not sell Savinho. Is he, though? Is he a proven commodity in the Prem? Because quite honestly, he only has 42 matches in the Prem, 42 appearances in the Premier League. Okay, and of course, all of it with Manchester City. His first appearance being on August the 18th, 2024. So yeah, so you're talking about a year and a half. Okay. I want you to do me a favor real quick. I want you to answer this question. Of the 42 appearances that Savinho has played in, how many goals has he scored? Right? Because you're looking for a goal scoring threat up the left-hand side. How many goals has he scored in the 41 appearances for City? I can tell you. One. 42 appearances, he has 1 goal, 10 assists. So you're looking at what? All said, you're looking at 13 goal contributions in a year and a half. And the last 2 goal contributions that were in on October the 18th this year was against Everton and then against Crystal Palace. And then last year it was against Leicester. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. He came up with an assist against Newcastle and Arsenal twice. But for the most part, you even look at his assists, it was against the Ipswiches of the world. Yeah, I mean, the dude is not really a goal-scoring threat. That's why I don't rate him. I think he is. I think he made his name in La Liga, and again, I also don't think that he really proved himself in La Liga as well too. And you're looking at who he was scoring against, but I mean, I could be wrong. Let's see, if we get a young left wing, do you think an older left back could be on the cards? I hope so. Well, an older left back, I still like the idea of Anthony Robinson of Fulham. I think he's ready to make the jump. And what's interesting about it, he comes back from the knee injury, and all of a sudden he's one of their best players again. And I know Spurs had interest in Anthony Robinson, so we'll see. But that being said, if you told me Nathaniel Brown of Eintracht Frankfurt came over, I'd be happy with that as well too. Let's see. But we also need a keeper. I would agree, and I think that keeper position gets filled in the summertime. I do not think that think that keeper is going to be a priority unless something materializes and lands in Spurs' lap. The biggest issue is that I know Marc-Andre ter Stegen has been named, but when you look at the fact that Ter Stegen is now like the third choice keeper with Barca, and I think he's also the German number 3. Like, he has fallen so far down, and it makes you wonder why. What is it about Ter Stegen that has plagued him over the last year and a half, to the point where he's like number 3? I like if it was like 5 years ago, yeah, maybe. But the reality is, like, you're absolutely right. I think we have to improve at keeper. I would definitely agree with this. The guy that I want is in Sunderland right now, Robin Roofs. That kid's the real deal, man. Sunderland keeper, 100%. We have been linked with James Trafford, keeper-wise. Yeah, I've heard that as well, too. As a matter of fact, me personally, I'd rather take Robin Roofs than James Trafford. Although Trafford's nice, though. Trafford's nice. I'm not going to lie. Let's see. Yo said loan for Trafford is more likely than a sale. Yeah, but again, the biggest issue that I have with Manchester City is the fact I don't think they want to help us out. I really don't. Like, not unless we're willing to overpay. And the thing about it is, I don't want to give Manchester City our money. Not for Savinho. And I just don't see them, and I don't see them being in a position to help us out, right? And that's the thing, is like, I can't even see them loaning Trafford out to us. That's the other thing as well, too. Like, of the players that they have that actually are going to help us now, it's Omar Mamouche, and they're not going to let go. They're not going to let Mamouche go, not until the summer. And even then, I still don't see it. But all right, that's going to do it for me, guys. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Dan Davenport, Yo-Yo. We also had Niall O'Connor. I want to thank all of you guys for tuning in. And of course, we will be back tomorrow, because obviously it is going to be the Hotspur live stream as Spurs take on Brentford in Premier League action. So that is going down tomorrow. Let me double check that, just out of curiosity. The 13th place. Yep, tomorrow at 3:00. So I will be back tomorrow for that. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and also hit the notification bar as well, too, so you don't miss out on any upcoming Stateside Footy content. Guys, I really hope that you guys enjoyed your holiday. More importantly, Happy New Year. And do me a favor, though. Tonight, be safe. Be responsible. Yes, it is the new year, and yes, you should celebrate it 100%. But also do yourselves a favor and be careful, because there's a lot of nut jobs out there that want nothing more than to ruin your celebration. So from that standpoint, man, be safe, man. Enjoy the new year, and I will see you tomorrow for the Hotspur live stream, as Spurs will take on Brentford as they're looking to do the double over the Bees. So until then, man, take care, guys. Bye-bye.